Hi scholars, happy Monday. I'm excited to do math with you today. Today we're going to be reading the story, figuring out the math that we notice in the story, and then finding ways to solve the problem that's in the story. So let's begin. Ready, set, read. I had some apples. So stop and think about what you notice and what you wonder about in the story so far. So I noticed that there's a character, and this character had some apples. I'm wondering how many apples this character had, and also what are they doing with the apples? Now we're going to figure out the math that we noticed in the story. I don't see any numerals or quantities, but as I'm rereading it, I had some apples. I noticed that there's an important word here that's telling us some of the math. Some. I know that some means more than one, so this character had to have started with more than one apple. And also that's telling me that they had more than one apple is the S at the end of the word apples, that there's more than one. So, I know this character had more than one apple. So let's stop and think about how many apples this character could have had. Could this character have had 10 apples? Yes, because 10 is more than one. Could this character have had 0 apples? No, probably not. Because again, it's apples, which is plural, more than one, and this word some means more than one. So now, do we have all the information we need to solve the problem in the story? No, not yet. So let's keep reading. Ready, set, read. I had some apples. I gave some apples to Miss Swan, and the rest to Mr. O'Connor. So now think about what you now know in the story, the new information you just gathered, and the wonderings that you now have. So the new information that I gathered is this character gave some apples to Miss Swan, and then this character gave the rest of their apples to Mr. O'Connor. The wonderings that I'm having are, I'm still wondering how many apples the character started with. And now I'm wondering how many apples did they give to Miss Swan? And how many did they give to Mr. O'Connor? I don't see any numerals or quantities still in the story, but I do know that there's math here. Because I see that word some, which means more than one, just like in the beginning. And I know that this word rest is important because it's saying that the character gave the rest of their apples to Mr. O'Connor. So that means that they gave the remaining apples that they had left to Mr. O'Connor and then didn't have any left for themselves. So let's just pretend. Let's pretend that the character had 3 apples. 1, 2, 3. The character had 3 apples. The character gave some apples to Miss Swan and the rest to Mr. O'Connor. Let's try to figure out how many they could have gave to Miss Swan and they could have gave to Mr. O'Connor. The character had 3 apples and they gave some of those apples to Miss Swan. We know that some means more than one, so they couldn't have given 1 apple. So let's say they gave 2 apples. Because I also don't think they gave 3 apples away because the word is some and not all. And we know that if they gave all the apples to Miss Swan, that means there would be none left for Mr. O'Connor. So let's say that the character had 3 apples and they gave 2 apples to Miss Swan and the rest to Mr. O'Connor. They had 3 apples and they gave 1, 2 to Miss Swan. That means that the rest they gave to Mr. O'Connor was 1. But looking back at this story, I noticed that we still don't know what the author's asking us to solve. I don't see the question or the problem in the story. So let's keep reading. Set, read. I had some apples. I gave some apples to Miss Swan and the rest to Mr. O'Connor. How many apples did I give to Miss Swan and Mr. O'Connor? So stop and think about what you noticed in the story now and what new information you just learned, and any wonderings that you may have. So I noticed that the author is asking a question at the end, and I know that because it ends with a question mark. The question is, how many apples did I give to Miss Swan and Mr. O'Connor? So it sounds like the author is giving us the problem they want us to solve in the story. How much apples they gave to Miss Swan and how many apples they gave to Mr. O'Connor. But I still have the same wonderings. I'm still wondering how many apples did the character start with, and how many they gave to Miss Watt and Mr. O'Connor, or if the author is going to give us that information. It looks like there's no numerals or quantities, so we're going to have to keep reading to figure out the new information that we're going to learn. Ready, set, read. I had 6 apples. I gave some apples to Miss Watt and the rest to Mr. O'Connor. How many apples did I give to Miss Watt and Mr. O'Connor? So stop and think about the new information you just learned from the story and any wonderings you're having. Oh, I see a numeral. That's the number 6. So now I know that the character had 6 apples. I don't see any more numerals or quantities, so I'm still wondering how many apples the character gave to Miss Watt, and then how many they had left over to give to Mr. O'Connor. But it doesn't look like the author is going to give us that information, and that's okay, because I can still use the information I learned to figure out one way to solve the question in the story that the author is asking us. So, together, we're going to show our thinking about one way to solve this story problem, and then you're going to get a chance to solve all the other ways that would make sense in the story. So I know that the character had 6 apples in the story. I'm going to use symbols first to show my thinking of how to solve this problem. I'm going to draw a heart to represent each apple in this story. Count with me, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to stop at 6 because I know that their character had 6 apples. So then I had to draw 6 hearts. I know from the story that this character gave some apples to Miss Watt and then the rest to Mr. O'Connor. So I know that some means more than one. So let's just say that the character gave 2 apples to Miss Watt. I'm going to write a W for want in 2 of the hearts that represent 2 of the apples in the story. So the character gave 2 apples to Miss Watt and then gave the rest to Mr. O'Connor. I know the rest means the remaining apples. And I can see that the remaining apples are right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to write an O to represent O'Connor as all the apples that the character gave to Mr. O'Connor. Now I'm going to draw a number bond to show my thinking. I'm going to draw the whole and the parts. I know that the whole is how many apples the character had all together in the beginning. And that's 6. So I'm going to write the number 6 in the whole and the number bond. I know that one part is 2. I know that's 2 because the character gave 2 apples to Miss Watt. 1, 2. So I'm going to write 2 in this part of the number bond. I know that another part of the number bond is 4 because the character gave the rest of their apples to Mr. O'Connor, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to write the number 4. Now I'm going to write a number sentence to show another way to show my thinking. I'm going to start off with 6 apples because that's how much apples the character started with. And the character gave 2 apples to Miss Watt, which means that they gave them away. They no longer have those apples. So it's takeaway, which is subtraction. So with the minus sign. 6 take away 2 apples that they gave to Miss Watt, which is the same as 4 apples, because that's how much apples they gave to Mr. O'Connor. I could write this out also in a sentence that would look like this. 6, not 6, take away 2, take away 2 apples to Miss Watt, is 4, which is the 4 apples that the character gave to Mr. O'Connor. And as I'm showing my thinking in these ways, I'm making a connection to hidden partners. Because I remember when I decompose or break apart 6 into parts, it kind of is just like a number bond. I'm decomposing 6 into parts, which is 2 and 4. And I know that 2 and 4 are the hidden partners in 6. So if I wanted to write another number sentence that would make sense, I could write 2 and 4 is the same as 6. So now, scholars, we found one way that would make sense in the story to solve this question or this problem in the story. Now it's your turn. You're going to figure out all the different ways that would make sense that solves the problem in the story. How many apples did I give to Miss Want and to Mr. O'Connor? We can't wait to see what you did and your thinking. Bye.